She cleaned her in-laws' farmhouse after their funeral. The storm had barely cleared when Denise stepped into the old farmhouse, pregnant and exhausted, while her husband barked orders to sell it all and move on. The walls still smelled of her in-laws' perfume, their photos coated in dust. She bent to clean, then found an envelope with her name on it. The ink was old, but the warning inside still burned fresh. Before we go any further, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Now, let's begin. They drove in silence until gravel popped under the tires. Denise pressed a palm to her belly, steadying the small kick while her daughter Ava tasted the cold air through a cracked window. The farmhouse waited ahead, gray wood and peeling paint. David killed the engine. Keys clinked Ked. One weekend, he said, we clear it, we sell it, we go. Inside smelled like dust and soap that had given up. Denise flipped a switch. A bare bulb buzzed to life. Mows floated. Photos leaned crooked along the hallway. She straightened one, then another. David was already on his phone, calling a realtor before they set bags down. Not staying long, he told the voice. Tomorrow is fine. Ava tiptoed around a fallen curtain rod. Did Grandma bake pies in that oven? Denise nodded. She wrung a dishcloth and started wiping the counter. The cloth came up gray. By noon, they'd opened windows. Wind moved the lace like someone breathing. Denise shook crumbs from a drawer and found a marble, a button, a church program. Outside, a neighbor slowed in a pickup. In the kitchen, the landline rang once, then stopped. David stacked boxes with quick, impatient movements. Buyer is serious, he said. He'll sign fast. We need the cash. In a hurry for the city, Denise said, in a hurry to stay afloat. He rubbed his brow. I know what I'm doing. She lowered her gaze and kept cleaning. The injustice pressed hot under her ribs. Two people who loved this land reduced to line items in debt math. She pictured his mother's hands, cracked at the knuckles, still kind when they cupped her cheek that first winter. Afternoon dipped the rooms in dull gold. Floorboards answered every step. Denise swept, then crouched to tug a wad from beneath the stove. A nail snagged her finger. She hissed, sucked the sting, and kept going. Ava carried framed photos to the table and lined them by ear, murmuring names. From the porch, voices drifted. Shame to see it go, someone muttered. Heard they're broke. A short laugh answered. Denise paused, then pushed the broom harder. David opened a beer from the garage fridge and stood in the doorway. Tomorrow at 10, he said. Signatures, wire, done. Denise nodded, but a knot tightened at her neck. She felt it when she picked up a fallen photo of David's parents, grinning, leaning on the fence like champions. She set it upright and whispered, We'll be gentle. The bulb hummed. In the quiet, the house seemed to answer with a patient breath. Now morning thinned the fog. Denise rose early, pulled on his mother's faded sweater, and tied her hair. The kitchen tile felt cold. She filled a bucket, squeezed soap until the water clouded, and set to work. Ava sat on the counter, peeling tape from a window. David paced with his phone. 10 a.m., he said. He grabbed his jacket, kissed Ava's forehead, and left to print forms. The door thudded, and the car faded into mist. Denise opened the bedroom where the blinds stuck halfway. She dusted the dresser, lifted a frame, paused at young faces smiling across decades. A floor plank near the window wobbled. She pressed her toe, heard a hollow note. She slid the bed a hand's width and tried the plank. Stuck, she worked a butter knife under the seam. The plank gave, then settled again with a soft complaint. Ava peeked in. Want help? Check the closet shelf, Denise said. Dust floated. Ava sneezed, then held up a tin of buttons and a tiny key on a string. Denise took the key, felt its teeth, and closed her palm. She pulled the dresser from the wall an inch. Metal scraped plaster. Behind a faded barn photo, a small iron door glinted. Denise set the photo on the bed, wiped the metal, and found a keyhole the size of a sunflower seed. The key slid in, met resistance, then turned with a clean click. Denise opened the door. Inside the wall safe, folded envelopes sat in a neat stack beside a brittle notebook. On top, her name waited to our daughter Denise. She broke the seal. We love you as our daughter. We know our son can be hot-headed and rash. Stop him from selling for quick money. Go through our safe. There is a secret he will not hear. She opened the next envelope. Land deeds, survey receipts, A business card for a mining surveyor with a handwritten note. Call me if you need confirmation. Southern Ridge. Follow the creek to the split oak. Her hands trembled. She lifted the notebook. Dates ran 2 years back. Notes tracked soil samples and coordinates. Final page. We found proof. Small vein. Southern slope above. V the dry gulch. Keep it quiet until we secure rights. Ava touched her arm. Mom. Denise breathed slow. They wanted us to know now. From the road came voices. 2 neighbors paused by the fence. He's dumping it today, one said. Denise slid the papers into a folder, tucked the letter into her sweater, and closed the safe. She opened the back door. Boots, she said. We walked to the split oak. They followed the creek through damp grass. At a bend, water braided around stones. The oak stood near the slope, trunk scarred. Beneath its roots, loose soil glittered. Denise crouched and ran a fingertip over the grains. They smudged against her skin. Not a promise. A hint with teeth. Her phone buzzed. A text from David. Leaving the printer. See you at 9:45. She wiped her hands on her jeans and looked back at the house. The decision formed, simple and final. She pocketed the survey card and turned toward the road now. The drive to town began quiet. Denise gripped the folder tight on her lap, watching the fields pass in a blur. Ava leaned her head against the window, half asleep. Every mile felt heavier. She knew David's temper when his mind was fixed. Reason died fast, but she couldn't stay silent. Not with the truth locked in her hands. When they reached the small diner at the edge of town, Denise stopped for air. She needed to think. She ordered a black coffee even though it turned her stomach lately. 2 farmers at the counter were talking low. You hear about the Carter land? One said, yeah, shame, they're selling it cheap. Heard the son's desperate. The other grunted, man don't know what he's sitting on. That soil's got history. Denise turned slightly, pretending not to listen. T. Every word dug deeper. She took her coffee to go and dialed the number on the survey card. Static crackled. Then a calm voice answered. Mason Surveying. Hi, she said softly. I think you worked with the Carters a few years back about a mineral report. The man paused. You family? I'm their daughter-in-law. They passed. Silence stretched, then the man exhaled. They were good folks, hard-working. They didn't tell many people, but yes, we found trace gold near the South Ridge. Enough to file for claim rights. Did they follow up? No, she said. They never got the chance. Well, tell their son to hold tight. That land's worth more than he knows. Don't sell to anyone till you get the paperwork reviewed. Her chest tightened. Thank you. Really? She hung up and stared out the diner window. The parking lot shimmered in the noon heat. Back at the car, Ava kicked her feet against the seat. Mom, are we poor? Denise smiled faintly. Not if we're careful. When they pulled up to the lawyer's office, David's car was already there. Through the window, Denise saw him shaking hands with a realtor, a sleek man with a grin too quick to trust. Papers spread across the desk between them. She walked in, the floor squeaking beneath her shoes. The receptionist blinked at her sudden entrance. Denise's pulse raced, but she forced a steady voice. Where's my husband? In the conference room, ma'am. She stepped inside quietly. David's back was turned, pen hovering above the contract. Stop! The word cut the air. He froze. The realtor frowned. Excuse me, miss. Denise set the folder on the table and opened it. Read this. David frowned. Denise. Not now. They trusted me, she said. Her voice didn't rise, but it carried weight. Your parents left me a letter. They knew you'd rush. They knew you'd sell what they spent their lives protecting. He started to protest, but she slid the letter forward. His mother's handwriting stared up from the page. The realtor leaned closer. What is this? Denise unfolded the deeds, the survey receipts, and finally the note confirming gold deposits. They found gold, David. It's real, and you were about to hand it away for pocket change. Silence filled the room. The ticking wall clock grew loud. David sank back in his chair, face pale. The realtor's smile died. "If that's verified," he muttered, "this changes everything." "It's verified," she said. "I spoke to Mason myself." Ava P. from behind her, clutching the doorway. "Dad," David rubbed his temples. I didn't know." "That's the point," Denise whispered. "You didn't want to." Outside, a slow wind bent the trees, carrying the faint smell of rain. The tension cracked just slightly, but Denise didn't move. She'd learned long ago. Truth lands quiet, but its echo never fades. The rain started minutes after they left the office. It came sudden and cold, rattling the windshield as Denise steered through the dirt road back to the farm. David sat beside her, silent, his phone dark. Ava hummed softly in the back seat, tracing fog on the window. The air inside felt thick with guilt and relief mixed together. Denise glanced at him once. "You'd have sold it for nothing." "I know," he said, eyes fixed on the road ahead. I couldn't see past the bills." She gripped the wheel tighter. "They did. That's why they trusted me, not you." He didn't argue. The sound of tires through mud filled the silence. When they reached the gate, it creaked open like it recognized them. The farmhouse lights flickered as she stepped in. The smell of old pine still lingered. Denise set the folder on the table and started a small fire in the stove. David stood near the doorway, dripping wet, unsure where to start. "They always said the South Ridge was sacred," she murmured. "Now we know why." He walked to the shelf, picked up an old photograph of his parents smiling. Beneath that same ridge, for a long moment, he just stared. The next morning, they drove to the southern edge of the property. The sun broke through thin clouds, washing the wet fields in pale gold. The mining surveyor, Mason, arrived in a dusty truck. He shook David's hand firmly. "I remember this land." They followed him through the grass until they reached the split oak. Mason crouched, brushed aside damp soil, and lifted a small clump. The earth glittered faintly. "Still here," he said. "You're sitting on a gold vein, my friend. Not huge, but strong enough to change your life." David swallowed hard. Denise stood behind him, Ava at her side, watching the moment land. Back at the house, the realtor called again, pushing to confirm the sale. David didn't answer. He looked at Denise instead. "We keep it," he said quietly. That night they ate by candlelight because the power had cut off again. But it didn't matter. The fire crackled warm and alive. Ava drew little circles on the fogged window, while Denise folded the letter once more and placed it in a tin box beside the safe. Neighbors talked the next day, of course. One said, "Guess they couldn't afford to sell after all." Another laughed. "Well, maybe she changed his mind." "Women like that don't stay clean. They guard things." Denise heard them while hanging sheets on the line, but she didn't respond. She just smiled to herself. David came out carrying a shovel. Mason said, "We'll need to fence off the south slope," he said. She nodded. "I'll help." He hesitated, then met her eyes. "Thank you for not giving up on this place or me." Denise brushed soil from her palms and looked over the field stretching under the sun. "Your parents gave us something to protect. We'll do it right." Ava ran ahead, chasing a butterfly, laughter echoing through the clean air. The farmhouse no longer felt heavy. It breathed again, alive, with purpose. As the day slipped toward evening, David stood beside his wife, the same woman his parents had once trusted when he couldn't trust himself. The wind shifted through the tall grass, whispering through the fence line. The land had kept its secret long enough. Weeks passed. The farmhouse began to change. Fresh paint covered the cracked walls. Tools leaned neatly on the porch. Laughter replaced silence. The mining team worked quietly on the southern ridge, confirming everything Denise had found. David stayed close to home. He fixed the roof himself, each nail a small apology. Sometimes he stopped just to watch Denise hang laundry, the wind tugging at her hair. One evening he walked in from the field holding a folded newspaper. "They listed us under local success," he said. "Carter Land officially registered for gold development. They called it a miracle find." Denise smiled faintly. It wasn't a miracle. It was love written down before it was too late. Ava ran in with muddy shoes, waving a small wild flower. "Grandma's favorite," she said, placing it in a jar on the table. Denise watched the petals tremble, light catching the rim of water. Later that night, the three of them sat on the porch steps. The air smelled like rain and clean earth. Fireflies blinked across the fields. David reached for her hand. "You saved us," he said quietly. She shook her head. "They did. I just listened." The wind carried the faint creak of the barn door. Somewhere in that sound was the echo of his parents' laughter. Faint but sure. Denise leaned against his shoulder, eyes on the horizon. What they found beneath the soil wasn't just gold. It was proof that the quiet ones, the patient ones, the ones who stay to clean when everyone else leaves, are often the ones who carry the future. The farmhouse lights glowed warm behind them. The land stretched wide and steady. Their story now written into it would not fade again. Some treasures aren't buried in the ground. They're hidden in loyalty, patience, and love that refuses to fade. If this story moved you, hit subscribe and share it. Someone out there might need the reminder that doing the right thing always pays back in.